Hello again, I'm Jeff with Home Rehab Pros, and we're finishing up a bathroom remodel, and we're going to install a toilet this morning. So we have the components that go with it. It came all in the same box, so we're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to show you how to do this. Okay, so here we have the things we need to put a toilet together. We have the wax ring, we have toilet bolt covers, the flange that seals the tank onto the base itself. Then we have just some simple tools. We have Phillips head screwdriver, we have a crescent wrench, a flathead screwdriver, and channel locks. So that should be all you need to be able to do this. So let's do this tank. So what we do, first thing we do is we take the tank and we carefully, these are fragile by the way, so we have to be careful. And we're going to put this upside down. So then we take the flange ring that is provided, and this fits right over the top. Very important, this seats into this, and that seals any water from coming out when you flush. And then this also is provided with bolts to be able to hook it up. So with this specific toilet, not all are like this. They're made differently. You'll have to follow the instructions on any model you would buy. But with this particular one, there's a bracket, and these square piece bolts slide right into that bracket. We're going to make sure we get them in there in the right place. Cut. Okay, so for these bolts to mount it, you have two washers and two nuts. That once we put this up onto the tank, we put our bolts through the holes, we set the tank, then we install a washer and then a nut, and we begin to tighten it up. So let's see how that's done. All right, so carefully, we pick up the tank, we stand it up, and we very gently align those bolts with the holes, and we just set it in. And you'll see that it's unstable because of the rubber that is sealing the tank. So then we take the first washer and the nut. Washer goes on first, of course. And then we thread on that nut. We snug it up just a little bit, and then we repeat on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to use my crescent wrench now to tighten this nut. So we go down and we adjust that wrench to the size of the nut, and we begin to tighten. Now you have to be careful with this on any toilet when you're putting a tank on. This one is nice because it has the bracket underneath, but over tightening can cause damage to the porcelain on the tank or even the bowl itself. So we want to be very careful with that. It has to be tight, but over tightening does not work. Okay, so we've installed the water supply line for the tank. It's just a matter of putting it onto the valve and making sure it's tight enough and that it doesn't leak when we turn the water on. So once the toilet's installed and you have the tank hooked up, you can turn the water on, and if you see any water coming out, or anything that would indicate that it's not tight enough. It's just a simple, little more tightening to make sure it doesn't leak. So now we're going to set up, we're going to put the bolts on the flange, and then we're going to set the wax ring. So these are things that usually come with a toilet. And if for some reason they didn't, you can get them in a kit with a wax ring or separately at most hardware stores. So this is what that looks like. We have the bolts, which can cut off if they're too tall. So let's go ahead and put these on. So you'll notice in the flange that you have slots for the bolts. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to get those on there. We're going to slide them in. And what we want to do is, you can see these lines are almost center. So you want this center on the flange because that's how your toilet is going to set. So we're going to slide these over enough to where they look like they're center. Put this on here. That looks about an appropriate place. Now we have these little plastic rings, and what they do is we slide those on the bolt, and that helps hold them in place. Okay, so now we're ready to put the wax ring on. So sometimes people like to put the wax ring right on the toilet, which is fine, but I personally, because a lot of times I do this by myself, I take the wax ring and I preset it onto the flange. And we'll explain how to do this as we go. Okay, so we're going to put the wax ring on. Right, now it comes with a cover. What I like to do is I like to peel that cover off. And then you can just take the rest right off there. And now the one I have here has a flange to be able to fit down in the flange that's on the floor. It's just an extra protection, helps seal it. Some wax rings don't have this. You can just set them right on. But I'm going to set this on the flange, right between there, so it's nice and steady. Now you'll notice that on the toilet, we have the slot. There's a slot on each side for the bolts to be able to go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my toilet, I'm going to carefully grab it in a place where I can balance it. So I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to step it over, and I'm going to look to the side, and I can align that right with the bolt. And it goes right through the slot. Double check the other side, and both bolts are in. So now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to press this toilet down to the floor gently. See now how it's all sitting on the floor, as it should be. It's in a good place. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start to put the bolts on. Okay, so now this toilet's in place. It's steady, it's sitting firmly on the floor. And sometimes if the floor's a little unlevel, you'll get a little rock to the toilet. But that's okay, because once you start putting the nuts onto the bolt, it will firm that up and stabilize it. So we're going to do this. Now one of the important things we do, because we're going to put bolt caps actually on, they come with the toilet. We put these on the toilet itself before we start to put the nut on. But it's important to know that you have to put this right to be able to slip and snap your cover into place. So it'll tell you this side up. So if you put it on upside down, your bolt cover is not going to work, and it's just going to hang there. So we've got to make sure we put it on the right way. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this here. You know, sometimes I even like to put a metal washer on before I put this on, but we're not gonna do that today. So we're gonna put that on. Then we're gonna take the nut that's provided, and we're gonna begin to turn that down. Okay, that's snug. So we're ready to finish tightening this with your crescent wrench. Now just a reminder that we always want to make sure that when you put the toilet down, it's even with the wall, so it's squared. So I'm going to make sure it's in a good place to be able to do that. If it's not, you want to make sure you square it. Okay, so we're going to tighten this. And again, we never want to over tighten. Not only can you possibly damage the toilet, but you can damage the flange, which you don't want to do. As we tighten these down, if there was any instability in the toilet, you feel that go away. We're going to stop there, and then I'll do an even amount on the other side. Okay, so this toilet is on, it's stable, so we're ready to get it finished up. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier was I have bolt cutters, and sometimes the bolts, if you notice, they'll have a cutoff slot. Okay, so if you have to shorten that bolt to get your cap on, which in this case I do, right? We're gonna cut that off. Get it in the slot. That easy. So then we're gonna take the bolt cover and we're gonna snap that in place. So I'm gonna finish the connection for the water supply to the toilet. Now, underneath the toilet, on the left-hand side typically, we have a fitting that we have to attach. So we put the hose up, and we turn that. We want to make sure it's good and tight. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on the valve and we're going to check for leaks and it'll allow the toilet tank to fill. Now it's important to check. You just take your fingers where we attach the water supply to the valve and you can feel around that. And there's no wetness on my fingers. And then I check where the supply is right attached to the tank. And I usually check it a few times because sometimes it takes a few minutes to notice even the slightest amount of water that's leaking from our attachments. Okay, this is good. So that tank is filling. And once we know we have no leaks and this is good and it's working properly, we'll do a practice flush on it. Okay, so now here the toilet's filled up. It's stopped running. So I'm going to do a practice flush just to make sure we're all good. All right. Everything seems good. We don't see any water running out of the bottom of the toilet on either side. So the seal seems to be good. Toilet's refilling the tank. And it shuts off. I'm going to double check again for leaks around the fittings. We're all dry. Okay, so we've installed this toilet and it's working. So now I can take the lid to the tank very carefully. And we're going to put that down. Very nice. Okay, so now we're going to take the toilet lid out. And we're going to install the toilet lid. Okay, so we're going to install this toilet seat. Now, I take a screwdriver. You can usually do it by hand, but I'll just pop up the back real quick. There we go. Okay, so we're all good. So we're going to install the toilet seat, and here are the components to go with that, the pieces. So we're going to take these out. What we do is see what we have going on here. Alright, so here's your bolts. They go through, and if you lift the back of this toilet seat there, that slips right through there. So we can do this to the other side. And we put that again in the slot. We can take this and set it through the holes. Okay. Now these, they go up like so, and then when we're done putting it on, we have these little caps that snap onto the, no they don't. Alright, so we take this and we pull up over the bolt, and we can turn it clockwise, and what that does is it goes up into the hole, and then we get it to this point. And what I like to do is I like to take my screwdriver and I hold this and I screw it down. Begins to snug up, just let it sit so we can adjust it for the other side if we have to. Okay. So now both of these are tightened, and what we do to stabilize this slips over the top and helps clamp it to that bolt. So we're gonna hear the snap. Okay, now we're good. It's nice and tight. This is a slow close seat, which is very nice. And two, when we put this on, when you're tightening those bolts, you want to make sure that the seat itself is aligned with the contour of the bowl. Otherwise, it may sit crooked. So all things that we want to double check. So here we have a toilet.